Okay, we are back with the Old Anime Project 3. I've started calling it Taupe, the Old Anime Project, Taupe 3. And I've kind of decided to make some changes with the structure of how I'm going to talk about the shows and movies that I watch for this series. Because what I noticed when I went back and watched some of my the first two episodes, I noticed that I go through the shows kind of chronologically and just like the order of events in the show, kind of comment on them. And I do think I make some insightful commentary, can kind of give my opinions pretty accurately to them. But I think it's a generally boring structure, and it might help if you haven't seen the movies that I'm talking about. But I think generally it's just kind of a boring system. So instead, I'm going to try to shorten down the episodes a little bit in what I talk about. Kind of talk about things a little more generally. I'll still give like brief descriptions of what it's about. But overall, I'm just going to kind of just go right through and talk about what I thought about them as opposed to doing all this breakdown stuff. So I watched two things for this episode. The first is a show called Project Zeorymar, which is from the 80s. It's a 4-episode OVA, mecha OVA, and the other one was Ninja Scroll, the pretty popular samurai action flick from the 90s. I don't remember the years for either of these. I have to say, I thought both were pretty all right. I liked Ninja Scroll more. I'm going to talk about them independently. But I'll start with Project Zeorymar. So Project Zeorymar is just this mech show where you've got this kid who was adopted and gets captured because he's got to fight in this mech because only he and this other girl, who are like these test tube babies designed to fight in this mech, have to fight these guys from the underworld that have their own mechs to get control of the mech that he fights so that they become the kings of the underworld. That's the general thing. Structure's pretty simple. It's learning about his past, and in between that, you've got fights, which actually, now that I'm thinking about it, is kind of similar to Ninja Scroll. I didn't mean to make this correlation. I'm really just thinking about it on the spot. I think it's pretty fascinating because in Ninja Scroll, you have a guy who's got to defeat these other like kind of magical, powerful samurai for reasons that were kind of confusing to me. But he's got to fight them, and in between there's like this kind of subplot that goes through, or not subplot, the main plot that goes through the whole thing as he fights. Both, I think, did a pretty all right job with that structure. In Zeorymar, you have these big mech fights. In Ninja Scroll, you have these samurai fights with swords and magic and other sorts of cool weapons and moves like that. In Zeorymar, I think its merits really fall into just having really good kind of production value, decent character designs, and good kind of shot composition, and just some art, some beautiful art for some of the shots. I had a friend of mine point out a city shot from the first episode that was just gorgeous, and just some other stuff that was really, some other shots that were really kind of detailed. And like I said before in the past couple episodes, these kind of older anime, these OVA projects, I'm finding are a lot more interesting in the art than a lot of these newer shows. And I think that's because they're hand-drawn. They've got this kind of eclecticness, this grain to them that's really appealing. And I think that just falls in line with my kind of taste in shows like this. It's really something else. And it's the thing I'm most excited to see as I watch all these shows and OVAs and movies, is that there are these cuts. There's beautiful Sakuga cuts. There's these great stills of just art that's just beautiful to look at, and that can make some kind of crappy plot line or boring or generic plot line just be interesting to look at least, and it can make something that maybe I didn't like that much, like, say, MD Geist from episode 1, I now think is a lot more interesting because of these cuts. And though I did like Zeorymar, it was pretty generic. It's just villain of the scene. You have to fight a guy and he beats him, obviously. Of course he does. But because it was so pretty to look at, and there was some good fight choreography and some interesting stuff going on with that. It was pretty fun to watch overall. The plot line was kind of, like I said, generic. We've seen it a million times. He is the only person capable of doing this. There's some cool stuff at the end where it turns out that spoiler alert, the kid is actually like a genetic like clone of the former king of the underworld, and that's why he's able to pilot these mechs, because that guy died, and then the guy takes over the kid's body. It's really weird, but it's pretty cool and interesting. Generally, though, the exposition and plot parts are the worst part and the most boring. But overall, I think it was a really good experience. And with that, I'm going to switch over to Ninja Scroll. Now, with Ninja Scroll, like I said, it's very similar. You have this samurai that has to fight all these other samurai, and of course he's going to win. He's powerful. They have really cool yet short scenes. They are short fight scenes, but they're pretty cool. The kind of stuff that happens, the way he defeats his enemies, because they are usually more skillful, use magic, or have some other technique that he does not have. They have an advantage over him. He has to get creative in the way that he fights them, and that ends up being pretty damn awesome. So, like with Zeorymar, you have these long moments of just exposition and them talking about the setting and the backstories of the characters and this kind of stuff that for an action movie is not that interesting. When I went into Ninja Scroll, I was really expecting it to be more of just like action scenes nonstop, which it wasn't. And that was fine. The action was fine and the plot line and exposition was fine. But it kind of bogged down the experience a little bit. I just found those scenes kind of boring sometimes. I think it would really benefit from a rewatch, though, where I kind of was able to not have to like really pay attention to everything that's going on, and I could kind of re-digest all the exposition, because there's a lot. It's pretty dense, the kind of world that they create, and there's a lot of different characters that have all of these different things, and generally it's pretty simple. There's Gemma, this kind of immortal being that the main character Jubei had an old fight with, and he's back trying to take over feudal Japan, and he's going to fight that, but there's kind of more layers to that, and who's in charge and who he's going to fight next. It got kind of confusing for me. That might have been just because I had a little bit of trouble paying attention in those more boring parts, but I do think it would benefit from a rewatch. So if I ever rewatch it, maybe I'll do a little redux of this and talk about it. But otherwise, I thought the movie, like I said, the action scenes were pretty fun to watch. The animation and art in this movie were spot on. Brilliant. Loved it. There were some really nice, just still shots of beautiful things going on. And there was never a moment in the movie where like anything kind of like seemed off or stilted. It had a really nice synergy and animation throughout the whole film that I really appreciated. I thought worked really well for its design. There was never any part. It was just so consistent, you know. I just loved the design. The character designs were pretty unique. I mean, unique to me relatively, because I'm new to these older anime, and I know that there's plenty of other things that have similar designs to Ninja Scroll. But I really liked them. They were all distinct from each other for the most part. I really loved the designs of all the villains. They were really cool, and how their designs complemented their fighting style or what skill set they had. I really liked how all that worked, and I think it was pretty good. Also, all the women, their naked bodies were very good. Even the main guy in the pool scene when he gets attacked by the snake lady for the first time, he's got a nice little man butt he's got going there. Pretty damn good. Yeah, I would have to say, if you are sensitive to things like rape and sexual harassment, maybe not a movie you want to watch. It's a little rapey of a movie, but I mean, it had its purposes there, and I appreciated it. So, yeah, I generally liked Ninja Scroll more than Zeorymar, though I mean, I don't think it's really fair to compare one to the other for the sake of this video. They were both pretty good. I recommend them both, at least to check out. Zeorymar, you can bust out an episode, and if you don't like it, you don't have to finish it. but still, it's just the full series is the length of a movie, so you can watch it. And Ninja Scroll, you could bust out, though. Kind of felt like a slow watch for me. But that's basically it. I don't know what I'm going to watch next. You'll find out in the next video. Until then, peace out, my dudes. Ah!